Hi, my name is Wesley Hipke. I'm the manager for Idaho's Managed Recharge Program. And I'm going to be speaking to you today on a long-term sustainable management program that has been implemented in Idaho and the importance Managed Aquifer Recharge has had on that program. To get everyone started and kind of oriented, Idaho is in the northwest part of the state, and it's a fairly mountainous state. So a lot of rocks, a lot of trees, and it's actually a fairly low water state, with this region down in here only getting about 8 to 12 inches of water, more up in the north. So far as water resources go, with the surface water, fairly abundant, approximately 60 million acre feet per year. Groundwater, the aquifers are fairly limited, usually basalt in nature for the most part, and a large part of the state's drinking water comes from these aquifers. Now, what we're going to be speaking most about is the ESPA, which is the fifth largest aquifer in the United States, a little over 10 million square miles. So, as far as the aquifer itself, the groundwater starts up here, flows down through the aquifer. It comes out in this area to discharges to springs into the river, and also down to this area. This area down here is called the Thousand Springs area. It's beautiful if you get a chance to see it, with the springs coming right out of basalt cliffs. Now, Idaho is a prior appropriation doctrine state, so that means first in time is first in right. Also, it does conjunctive administration, where surface water and groundwater are administered together in priority. Now, as far as the Snake River goes, there's some other interesting things here. At the Milner Dam, by statute, we can take the river to zero flow. However, further downstream, there's some minimum flows in, higher in the wintertime, lower during the irrigation season. So that means that water, when this goes to zero, has to be made up from the discharge to the river and springs and a few tributaries. Now, as far as the ESPA, how it was developed is when people came into the state, they first settled along the river where there was water. Again, it's a fairly dry state, especially in this part. As more people came in, they built more canals, irrigated more land, shown in the gray here. As more people came in, and as well drilling and pumps got better, they started using more groundwater. So your senior rights have the tendency of being the surface water, and the junior being the groundwater rights overall. Another important factor of this system is these reservoirs. Now, these only show part of the reservoir system. It's a system operated by the Bureau of Reclamation, which saves that excess water that comes from the heavy snow in the mountains for use throughout the year. Other uses is hydropower. So the Snake River through this area and up along the edge over here counts for 50% of Idaho's power use, which is green hydroelectrical power. There's also a lot of other uses around this Thousand Spring area. You have a lot of aquaculture, where around 75% of the trout that's used throughout the United States comes from this area. And of course, there's other industries, cities, and other uses throughout this area. So what the problem is? Well, as people came into the state, and so this black line is the aquifer storage, blue line is discharges from that Thousand Spring area. So as people came into the state, and those canals were built, they started taking water from the Snake River and transporting across the plains. Those canals leaked, and they leaked significantly, and there was plenty of water, and so a lot was brought out. So during this period, from 1912 to 1952, over 450,000 acre feet per year was added to the aquifer, which also showed up in the stream flows. However, with the invention of the turbine pumps in around 1952 and a series of droughts, more efficient farming practices, from 52 to 2015, the aquifer lost 215,000 acre feet. The problem is, during this peak area, water rights were still being given out. So the amount of water rights was basically based on this artificially high here. So once it got down to here, those old surface water rights, first in time, first in right, weren't getting their allotment, and that led to a lot of legal issues that weren't sustainable in the long run. So what the state of Idaho had the Idaho Water Resource Board, which is accountable for water sustainability in Idaho, among other things. They came up with a comprehensive aquifer management plan. Now, this was a stakeholder process with all the major water users and took numerous years to develop, but in 2009 it was adopted. And basically what they came up with was adding 600,000 acre feet to the ESPA water budget on a yearly basis to stop the decline and build it back up to a sustainable level. What they ultimately came up with, or the key components of it, aquifer recharge would add 250,000 acre feet per year on average, a demand reduction, mainly in groundwater, of 240,000 acre feet per year, groundwater and surface water conversions of over 100,000 acre feet per year, and also cloud seeding, adding more water supply than what would have normally been there. So once that was in place, what we're going to focus on in this talk, obviously, is the managed recharge part of it. So in developing any recharge program, especially a one of this size with this large of goal, the first thing that was looked at is the water even available that's not already accounted for being used. So at that time, there's 1.2 million acre feet on average available for managed recharge. Now that can range from 130,000 to over 5.5 million depending on the year. It's normally available in the wintertime, the non-irrigation time, and that can bleed off into the spring runoff period if there's enough flow. So the water's available. The next part of it, who's going to pay for it? Obviously, something like this is going to be fairly expensive. So the state of Idaho has allocated the Idaho Water Resource Board $10 million a year currently for aquifer stabilization throughout Idaho. Now, this covers a lot more than just managed recharge, but managed recharge is a very large part of it. So the water's available, the funding's in place. The priority was increasing the recharge capacity and the monitoring. So, as far as increasing the recharge capacity, this gives you a quick look at the number of studies and kind of the location of the investigations that were taking place to improve managed recharge. Now, these covered a broad range of things: improving canals, getting around hydro plants, building new recharge sites. And one thing I want to point out, a lot of the focus was in the lower valley here because water was available all winter long. Where, as I mentioned earlier, up here, it's only available about 50% of the time. So what these sites ended up with is an increase in capacity and the managed recharge sites. So what we have here in the lower valley, these sites are very prolific, mainly basins. And the basins are normally in the basalt area, have been very productive. Some of these sites can do around 500 to 700 CFS, and some of them are quite large, around 300 and over 300 acres. The canals, not so much. There's kind of fewer of them, but they are bigger. The upper valley is a different story. The canals can leak a lot of water. However, the off-canal sites are much smaller. You don't have the big sites. They're only around 100-some acres down to 10 acres. Normally basins, mixture of basalt and alluvium. This is the area that we have the most to improve because when water is available in this region is normally in the spring when the canals are already operating irrigation and can't be used to conduct managed recharge. So with this added capacity, what have we done? Well, we've done fairly well. So some drier years, still building out the capacity down here. And so these dark blue lines show how much water was available. The gray box is how much recharge in the lower valley. The light blue is how much recharge in the upper valley. Again, recharge is available pretty much all winter long every year. This one shows the improvement that we've made with our capacity. Even though there was less water available, it's our second highest year since the start of the full-scale program. In these lower years, it's an improvement that we can pretty much capture all the water that's available, where we didn't even have the capacity for that to start with. What this has ended up with is over 1.9 million acre-feet of water added to the aquifer. That's an average of 248,000 acre-feet per year, a little bit shy of that 250 goal that we have. And it speaks to the importance of having that excess capacity during the wet years to capture as much as we can to help sustain us over the dry years. So, how much does this cost? Well, from 2014 to 2021, the Idaho Water Resource Board has spent over $32 million. Now, a lot of that has been in capital costs, which as we move forward, hopefully that will go down a little bit. But a good chunk of it is in conveyance costs. So we don't pay for the water that we recharge, but we do pay for the entities, the private entities, to move the water and to recharge it. O&M is around $370,000 on average. Overall, taking everything into account with the amount of water that we've recharged, our current cost is $7.60. I think most of you would pretty much agree this is a bargain for water. Where up in Idaho currently, there's, especially during the drought, it can get up to $100, minimally $20. So still pretty good bargain. So what impact have we actually had on the aquifer? Well, from 1980 to 2015, this shows you the impact. We lost over 10 million acre-feet during that time period. Now, from 2015 to 2021, we've gained 2.3 million acre-feet. I would love to take full credit for that, but there was other things going on at that point in time also. So, I'm going to show you a little animation here. On your left, you have observed the water level changes. Green increases, red are decreases. The map on your right shows what caused the water level change. Now, we're just going to look at the positive changes here. Yellow is incidental recharge, which that's anything from the natural recharge from a heavy snow year to what normal losses from canals and from irrigation. So the blue area, that's going to be the managed aquifer recharge, and the red is going to be from the conservation. That's the other part of the camp program that I mentioned. So as we continue on, you'll kind of see what normally happened is water came in and then it dispersed. This is a very leaky aquifer. So one thing I'll point out, this red here, is you start seeing the impacts from the conservation that we've done. You'll notice that doesn't show up as a long-term effect. One thing I want to point out is that's spread over a much larger area, so that's going to take time to build up, where the recharge is pretty focused. You'll also notice the retention times are better down in this lower region and a little higher up in this region. So what we end up with is where recharge has really made the difference is building up this area. And even though our recharge sites are located in this, it's actually built this up. And where this natural recharge from a really wet year in 2017 would have drained out of the system, we've been able to keep that up. So another way I can, as far as the impact that recharge has had, is so to date, out of that 1.9, most of it is still in storage, which is a good thing because that means it will slowly leak out over time and help mitigate the effects from drought. The rest has been gains to the springs down in this area or to the reach gains along the river. This is important also, providing those needed flows for agriculture and other uses. Another way of showing it, so this graph I showed you before with the storage and the Thousand Springs discharge. Well, we're going to focus in on this area right down here. So we're just going to look at the change in storage. So this is where we're currently at with our actual information, and this is with the impact with recharge and those conservation effects. Well, if we take out the impacts from recharge, it declines significantly. You take out conservation, even more. People were concerned that it started dropping off during this drought period, that we weren't having an impact. This is where monitoring becomes really crucial, of being able to show the impact that you have, both for the stakeholders and to make sure the program's being the most effective that it can be. So, lessons learned. The goal is to actively manage the water resources to mitigate decades of decline. This does not happen overnight. It's important to manage expectations. The other thing is be as flexible, build as much flexibility as you can to optimize those management strategies to handle changing conditions, both natural and political. The other thing, which I haven't talked a lot about, is developing the monitoring and tools to assess the impact and effectiveness of the program. This is important when large dollar values are being spent. So with that, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me at this information below. Thank you very much.